Hello, welcome back to my channel. So unfortunately, I just did a recording, but it froze. I'm covering the European Club Cup. And my team from the 4NCL, Blackthorn, who originally were Blackthorn Russia. So that was the name of the company that Gary O'Grady was operating. I don't know if he's still operating it, but obviously there are all these problems with Russia in recent times, so we dropped the Russia bit to kind of placate the 4NCL, right? I would have just renamed it Russia to really annoy people, but that's just me. Okay, just drop the Blackthorn bit and just call it Russia. Anyway, yeah, we're having a look at this game. Dave Ledger is playing. So this tournament is taking place in Albania, right? And normally they're in a beautiful part of the world. I could have played because obviously I'm a member of Blackthorn, Blackthorn team, but the expenses would have been very high. So I decided not to play. Obviously I don't particularly like flying either, but that's another issue. But getting there would have been an issue, but I could have probably got on a plane maybe, but actually, the expenses are very high. Some of these players will obviously be paid. Like Magnus Carlsen, who's playing, you would expect him to be getting paid a hefty fee, right? I mean, how much do top GMs get? If you're like a 27-20 player, you might get $2,000 to play something like this. Plus your expenses, you might get $3,000. I don't know how much you get. Someone like Magnus, however, commands a much higher fee. But someone like Dave Ledger, he has to pay for all his own expenses, right? So that's quite a big difference. So anyway, let's just get to a position in the game. Hang on, how do we do that? Right, let's just get to a position on the board and let's analyse this. Right, so black has just his move is it? It's white's move, right? Yeah, white has some. I actually think that Blackthorn is doing quite well in these games because I just looked at Andy Ledger's game and he seemed to be doing quite well. Richard Bates seemed to be about equal. And now we've got Dave Ledger, who I've known for many years. I first played him in a 4NCL game in Newcastle, actually. This is near where I live. And as well, I stayed with my Uncle Lance. He died, a few years after. He was already quite old. But it was near Whitley Bay, actually. I think he was living in Whitley Bay at the time or something like that. And the tournament was in somewhere near Washington, which is in County Durham. Anyway, I played Dave. I played him a few times. Lost to him in a close Sicilian once at Hastings, I believe. But he's quite a tough player, actually. Nice guy. All his brothers play. Andy, Steve. Steve is the oldest. I think their father was like a pastor or a vicar or something. Steve is the oldest. Andy's probably the strongest. He's the youngest, I believe. And then Dave's like the middle guy. So he's like the middle and the middle strongest, right? Ironically. But in this position, I think white has, reasonable chances, but it also seems okay for black. I don't think black has a direct threat, but how does white make progress here? I'd be a little bit concerned if I was white and trying to win against a low-rate player. Dennis Wagner is from Germany, I believe. Quite a decent player. Can he go rookie 2? The problem is there's a check here, right? Now, if I go G5, I'm giving you that square. Now, I could conceivably play F4, but which hits the knight, but does it actually because D3 is hanging. So maybe it doesn't immediately hit the knight, but you might threaten to go. Well, bishop b2 could also run into rook d3 and knight f4, so it's not actually clear what your threat is. But I guess your threat is bishop e2, right? Your threat is bishop e2, which you could also, but g6 needs to be calculated. So g6 is a very serious move, right? So how does this work out? So I could take on g6 and then play f5, for example. Let's just move this in a little bit. So I've got my, I'm in my New York office at the moment. New York. I retired from singing after the British Championships of commentary, but I always keep coming back to it. But g6 is quite a good move. And yeah, it seems okay for black, but you can, I mean, you can do stuff like this, but the problem is it can backfire because you're creating weaknesses in your position, right? I mean, there's even rook d3 and bishop f5, which is certainly something that would come into consideration. Because if you don't take, then black is really, really solid, and maybe could even claim that they're better, right? But after, say, for example, queen f3, you don't go bishop e4 because of queen f7. But you take a timeout, and yeah, you play it like that. So f5 is possible, but very risky. So yeah, I'm interested to see what happens. Let's go on to another game. Chris Duncan is playing against Fedor Chuk. Yeah, actually, I think maybe this is a game where the high-rated player will win, but simply because, not that I've got anything against Chris, but it's hard to believe they're not going to win a single game in this match. This team. I think we'll get at least one draw, looking at the positions on the board, but it's just an unclear position, right? Chris is normally a very well-prepared player as well. We do have some well-prepared players in the team. And in this position, it's white to move. No, it's black to move, sorry. Yeah, you have to be slightly careful. I think if you play him like that, then your queen gets trapped. But that would be very careless. But you could win a pawn, but the problem is c7 is hanging at the end, so that's not ideal, I guess, would be the argument. But no, although there is an argument that black is still better after this, right? Maybe. Because, you know, a3 is hanging. Your pawn up and a3 is hanging. There is bishop e7, rook e8. But then bishop b5 would win the exchange. After bishop e7, you could also consider bishop takes a3, which is also interesting. Like bishop f8, king f8, but then bishop c4. Yeah, white's doing well. So probably black won't do that, but this pawn remains a long-term weakness. And there's moves like simply bishop d7 if black needs it. In fact, is black already a pawn up? Black is. How did black win a pawn? Let's go right back to the opening. Oh, I played this variation, but I've never played with a5. That's interesting. I didn't know a5 was a good move there. Okay, so that's maybe something to remember. Well, I probably won't remember it, but yeah. So bishop d5, strange move. But okay, but queen e8 is kind of an obvious response. Okay, so maybe d5 just became weak, yeah. And he didn't want to go bishop c4 because of bishop g4, threatening bishop f3, and then picking up the bishop. Yeah, so maybe that's what he kind of overlooked. h3 is not a critical move, so yeah, I feel like so have we had any more moves in that game? Black's still thinking, but I think black might get over the line in this game if he can navigate the complications, because he is a pawn up, right? Even a move like, but it's not so easy to consolidate because queen f5 runs into bishop d3. So for the time being, I've known Chris, another guy I've known for many years. I played a tournament with him in Denmark when we were both younger, and he recommended I played a dragon. I played a dragon against this guy who then he got annoyed with me because I was like chewing gum at the board. I was being obnoxious, as I often was when I was younger, and still am. And he got annoyed with me, and I remember Chris was staying with this guy Peer. Was it Peer or something like that? who I ended up staying with later, who lived on a kind of a housing estate in Copenhagen. And I stayed with a family. And the son played chess. I think they had a daughter as well. The daughter ended up involved with some kind of accident involving fireworks. That was later. But yeah, I played this guy who was quite a decent player, was like an IM, and he kind of, he sort of, he got annoyed with me, and then he resigned in a drawn position. So I wonder whether he resigned because he was just annoyed, or I don't know what was going on. But I played the dragon because I played the dragon when I was a kid, but I gave it up because I didn't know enough theory, and I got annoyed when I got checkmated. But then Chris knew a lot of theory, so he kind of recommended. The guy has taken. I think that's a good move, and I think I would expect Black to win the game, to be honest. In fact, if you take on d4, you can even just take with a bishop. But yeah, Chris ended up going into finance, and not finance actually. He was in business. He was involved in business. So I think if you take on d4 and then take on c7, Black could just play a move like bring the bishop out and drop b7. So something like queen d4, bishop d4, rook c7, and then just develop the bishop on c8, and then you give up d7, and then you go rook b8 at the end. And even though you give them back your pawns, b2 is horribly weak. You're going to drop b2. Black's a lot better. So I've known him for over 20 odd years, and he got involved in a company called Betson, and he made some money out of that. And he was also in Betfair, and he was like in betting and stuff, and quite successful better. Steve Ledger's also. So it's quite a lot of boards actually. It's not just 4 boards. It's quite a few boards. I think like 5 or 6 boards. He seems to be doing badly. How's Richard Bates getting on? Knight takes e5 is played, yeah. So Black has won a pawn. So when I left it was at this position. Yeah, I wonder why he didn't just go here. So Black went rook b8. He went knight a2. That seems like a very odd move to me. I don't get that move. Oh, but he's ended up winning the exchange, right? Which actually does make some sense then if you're winning the exchange. So bishop e8 now. Bishop e8, rook a8. And Black's idea will be that knight remains in the centre, so there's some ideas of maybe going queen b7, knight f3. So Black would have 2 pawns in exchange, but he is exchanged out. So maybe some variation like this, you take, and then you hit this knight somehow. I'm not sure how, because if we go here, I might just go... No, that's a decent move. Maybe I'll just go here, actually. But then queen e4. Also knight c4 is an option. But I wonder, why did Black have to... I mean, after bishop f3, why didn't Black just go queen a6? What was wrong with that? Oh, knight b4 was the problem, right. Oh, tactics. That makes some sense, actually. Yeah, Richard's quite a tricky player. He's quite devious. So knight b4, queen b5, knight c6. And then if you move the rook to c8, have knight e7. So it's all a question of how you give out the exchange. And that wouldn't have been a good way. Apparently Black decided that wouldn't have been a good way to get out the exchange. So now knight b4 will just run into queen a7. Although then you can take on e5 anyway. But then knight e5, bishop e8, rook e8. There's no knight c6 because, well, there is, but the knight covers that square. So I suspect this is about equal, but Richard, it's about the same sort of time situation. A lot of French guys have won. So what about the bigger boards, right? Jordan Van Forest won already against 2300. How did his game go? Some kind of Slav. Yeah, 94. Jordan Van Foy is a very talented player. I remember playing him when he was 15 and tournament in Amsterdam, and he just wiped me out. And I was thought, yeah, this kid is very, obviously it's hard work as well, right? So sometimes you get the impression from juniors that they're just enormously talented, but you're forgetting that they're also working incredibly hard. But I just got the feeling that it was kind of like a natural talent. And that would probably be justified by his results, right? He's one of the best players around. He's won Vacanze. I think also chess excellence runs in his family. I think his uncle was a good player or something. I can't remember, maybe his grandfather or something. I remember reading about that. His brother also plays. His brother's also a very good player at a GM. So, yeah. I mean, this is just a bit of an annihilation by Black. Giving up the exchange for a huge amount of compensation and an overwhelming amount of compensation. It's a very good prep there. Sadwani's a good player as well. Another good young player, right? How's he getting on? He's gone bishop f6. Seems like a good move. Although there is knight takes c6 here, but then maybe that runs into knight c4. No, queen h6 check. Yeah, general white attack grounds or halt. You go queen h6, but black has king g8. If knight c6, then queen d6. Yeah, but interesting now how much people like Van Forest get paid to play in these events. You know, maybe we need to get these chess stalkers on the kind of case, you know, find out how much they're getting paid, you know. There's a few of them about, it would seem, but I'm only kidding. Yeah, that whole, there's all these like forums now, like Chess Reddit and chess.com and Chessable, English Chess Forum. You can get lost in these kind of byways and just keep reading. Somebody made this comment about Hans Niemann, you know, double standards to kind of defend Simon Williams, for example, but at the same time attack Hans Niemann. I thought that was a valid comment, but one thing I would say about Hans Niemann is I think there is quite a lot of evidence that he quite possibly did cheat over the board, even though a lot of people claim he didn't. Which I would stand by. You know, I think the whole Hans Niemann situation, I don't think Carlsen would have reacted in the way he did if he just felt that Niemann was just a cheater online. I think he felt there was. He did say that later. He said that he felt uncomfortable in the game. Now at that point, Niemann had just scored. Actually, knight g6 here is a move, and it's an immediate draw. In fact, knight g6 seems to win for white, no? I don't know why I didn't see that earlier. Yeah, knight g6. It just seems to be crushing. Somehow Sadwani's gone wrong because knight g6 and practically mates, right? So you've got to take. And then presumably you're going to lose, aren't you? Like rook, sorry, do I go rook there? Or I guess I just go check, right? Although maybe, I mean, you could hope that this somehow survives, but it's hard to believe. There's rook g7, maybe. Ah, but rook g7 you take, and then you go to e8. A very, very scary position for black. So it feels like Sadwani could well lose this game. Yeah, so, yeah, going back to that Niemann discussion. I did hear a rumour that Niemann had cheated over the board, but yeah, I felt like Carlsen, yeah, he was very obviously convinced at the time that Niemann had cheated over the board, which a lot of people seem to regard as a much more you know, a much more serious offence than cheating online. You know, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but generally feel people do get more offended because it's quite a sociopathic thing to do, to sit there and cheat against somebody online. As far as the Simon Williams situation is concerned, yeah, it's the last thing I'll say on this subject. I've known Simon for many years. People have made these valid points on the forums that, yeah, people have been very exposed to these pension scams, and I think they're valid points to make. You know, these are people's life savings. You know, it's a very unfortunate situation. that needs resolving. People that need to pay. I think the problem was that Simon agreed to put his name to that particular company, and I'm not sure what his level of involvement was. There was some kind of level of involvement, but it wasn't really. I don't believe he was involved in the day-to-day running of the company. How much he knew about what was going on, I don't know. I'm not really sure, about that. I mean, obviously the ombudsman made their own decision. But people made valid points about Simon not having much experience in the financial sector. As far as the timeline of when this happened, now when Simon posted about it on the forum, he claimed that it was about 10 years before or something. So he posted about it in 2019. So I think it was maybe more, like 13 years ago, he claimed. So I don't think that this whole thing started in 2013. But yeah, obviously people need to be remunerated for this, because if you put your money into a pension fund and it disappears, then it's a very serious thing. It's not right. I was reading about some of the stuff that happened to Case. People wanted their money. They asked for their money. They weren't given their money. To me, that's unacceptable. That sounds not very good business practice at all. And that is one thing you should have if you're running some kind of financial business. Then you need to be above the board. You need to be above attack, so to speak, or however you put it. But yeah, I don't think that's good enough. It sounded to me like the business was some kind of Ponzi scheme run along the lines of something that Bernie Madoff would pull off. I also was reading about Sam Bankman-Fried recently, and he got into trouble because he was using part of his business to pay off another part of the business. And, with people's money that you weren't supposed to do that with. So that was kind of a similar thing in a way. But yeah, it's basically a kind of corrupt situation. I don't know what will happen with Simon, whether he'd have to pay that full amount off or whether he will be able to appeal his decision. But that's the last thing I'm going to say on the subject anyway. I don't really want to keep going talking about this whole subject over and over again. It gets a bit tedious. I've got my own issues to deal with. It's sad for Simon, but, we've all got our own issues to deal with. So, but yeah, warning, if you put your name to a business, be very, very sure that you know what you're doing. It's the same thing like I've got into trouble in the past where I've rented property, put my name to it, and then you end up having to pay. If you don't like the property, you want to move out early, you end up having to pay the full amount. So it's always a name that goes on the signature that ends up getting stuffed, and there might be somebody working behind the scenes that ends up getting away with it because they haven't put their name to the signature. So yeah, that's really all I want to talk about. I'll just address that quickly. This Arunawat seems in trouble, right? Have we had any more moves in this game? He may be able to survive. Oh, we have got this position. This is a position where White has to work out if this is a fourth win. It feels close to a fourth win, right? I'll be surprised if this isn't winning, but because normally the golden rule is if you drag the king out into the open, you are winning. But this might be one of these exceptional cases, and obviously White needs to be very certain that it wouldn't surprise me if he bowed out with a draw here, right? So let's just think about that variation again. So what are your choices? You could go rook g7. You could go, if check here, does black go king e6 or does black go king e8? Like king e8. I don't believe you can go knight f6 and bishop h5 because king will run to d8. You can play this move, but then the bishop will go to g7. And that is also possible. But now knight f6 could be played. Knight f6, rook f6, bishop h5. But the king goes to d7, right? Yeah, king goes to d7, so that's no good. But now knight g7 is possible, right? Knight g7. And that seems winning, yeah. King f7 is bishop h5 and queen g6, mate. So go back to this position. So the king has to go to e8. By process of elimination, the king must go to e8. But is it winning for white? Because, yeah, I mean, this is a situation where you feel like you're probably winning, but with no time left, and you're playing a much higher rated player, you have to be absolutely certain that this is winning. I'm sure the computer probably will say it's winning somehow. But I'm not certain. Like rook e1 is possible here. Rook e1, king d6, like something like bishop g4, but then you go rook e8. And the game continues. I guess, well, also you could go knight d7. It's also possible to give the king a hidey. Yeah, so is there anything more like, maybe this is just a draw then. Believe it or not. There's also rook g7 here, but the king could also go to e6 in that variation as well. Oh no, I can't believe the king would go to, I think after rook g7, I think you take, right? And then, where do you go with the king? I don't think you go here, maybe because of check. And then mate, but you go to e8. And that should be enough to survive the game. And actually win the game, probably. So, quite possible that even I would take a draw here. Even the great Gordon would take a draw. But, I mean, it does look, I mean, I'm sure the computer would say this is winning for white. There's also knight f6. There's knight f6, queen f6. You can probably win the queen in that variation somehow, but no, maybe you can't. Bishop h5 is just king e7. And the thing is, your opponent is going to see all this, right? So it's not like you can just go, right, you know, let's take an adventure and hope for the best. You know, you have to be absolute. You can't bluff. Like when you're playing 2600 guys, you can't bluff. You know, so one of the difference when you know, when you're playing a low rated player, you can often get away with bluffing them when they're short of time, and not as Sabwani's particularly short of time here. Actually, the clocks seem to have stopped, so it's quite possible the game did end in a draw, right? Now, White's only got... He has gone for check, so probably he's going to repeat, right? What is the engine saying? Oh, I think White's winning, yeah, bishop g4. Yeah, I suspected the engine would like White here. What about rook g1? Does rook g1 actually not win, yeah? It does actually win as well, because I was looking at this. Oh, rook g6 is a killer blow, yeah. I think you kind of have to go for it here, even with like 6 minutes left. But from a practical point of view, and playing team chess, it's understandable if White takes a draw. Because even though the engine is saying that White is winning, you know, from a practical perspective, it's not that easy. So bishop g4, yeah, and then White's toast. I mean, Black's, yeah, very nice, because I think, like, say for example you go here, I just go check. Here it's an unthreatening mate, so let's say you play rook a7. But now I think I can pick your rook off. Like rook a7, or even rook a7, rook g1, what do you play? Rook a7, rook g1 now. Rook g1, yeah, you got no move. You can't go to e7 because of queen g7. And you go d8, you lose the queen. So all these problems, White should go for it here. I mean, look, all your pieces are attacking. The black rook on a8, your extra rook is not in the game yet. So it makes logical sense to go. I mean, it's such a tragedy if White didn't go for it here. But I don't think he will. I think he's going to take the draw. I think he's going to take the draw. He's got 4 minutes left to make 7 moves. And he's good enough to find bishop. I mean, the guy's 2380, right? He's not that much lower rate than me, like, you know. Would I gamble here? I didn't see bishop g4 in the analysis, did I? But if I had enough time, I'd see bishop g4. But yeah, I suppose this guy could also make the same argument. I'd probably see bishop g4. Yeah. So Europe have regained the Ryder Cup, which is no good for me because I had £100 on USA to win. I should have backed Europe. Yeah. Europe always win at home. That they have an outstanding record at home. And I think actually going forward, they're probably more promising going forward because they've got these people like Aberg who are very, very good. Although America got a lot of good young players like Will Zalatoris and Cameron Young and, you know, various players who are quite promising, younger players. Yeah, Hovland's like a machine. Now he's like a robot. So I think Hovland is like a top 4 player. I think it's like a big 4. It used to be a big 3. It used to be like Scheffler, Ram, McIlroy. But I think you'd also say Hovland is in that argument now as well. And yeah, he's obviously going to win a major fairly soon, I would think. Going back to this, right, let's have a look at the women's. What is it?